Hey everyone, good morning. It's Megrette. If we haven't met, my name is Megrette. I'm a weight inclusive diabetes educator and dietitian, and I write the newsletter No Weight Loss Required. And this is Sunday Coffee. So, Sunday Coffee is a little video where I'm drinking coffee. I just woke up and I'm talking to you guys casually. And what we do in Sunday Coffee is I try to help people connect some of the articles. Now, our articles are written to help people move from a perspective of restriction into a perspective of choice and abundance. And so we're kind of shifting this idea that when I have prediabetes or diabetes, I'm trying to prevent diabetes, that I'm not allowed or I can't have. And we're trying to let go of that mindset. We're trying to reach into this idea that, nope, you get to figure it all out and eat things and enjoy your life. And that doesn't require you to lose weight in order to manage your blood sugars and overall health. Now, No Weight Loss Required is built on the roadmap, which is the No Weight Loss Required roadmap. It has 4 parts, and each quarter we do a section. So we're in quarter 1, and we're actually doing step 3. And step 3 is moving from this idea that we need to be fixed. We need to fix ourselves. We need to fix our blood sugars. We need to fix our body. We need to fix to healing. And that's really a fundamental shift when we think about nutrition and health. So, fixing unfortunately makes us into an object. We fix things. We don't actually, we don't fix people. People aren't things to be fixed. People are here to heal. And hi, Beth. And in this, we're kind of wrapping that one up and we're transitioning into the last step of No Weight Loss Required roadmap, and that is sustainable self care. So, what does sustainable self care look like, and what are the components? And so, in this Sunday Coffee, I'm going to kind of walk through those for you. And you do have access to the chat if you want to ask any questions. I took some notes because I can ramble and get lost, so I don't want to do that. But hey, whatever. And we'll give myself a little grace there. So when we talk about, hi, Tamisha, when we talk about sustainable self care, this information that I'm sharing with you is coming from the Inclusive Diabetes Care Pyramid. And that was something that I created about 5 or 6 years ago to help us understand why a lot of our changes aren't really sustainable. And I really want to explain that the pyramid is there's a base level and it builds on top of each other. So we really want to recognize that if you try to go from the top down, it probably won't work. We really have to work on the bottom. And so sustainable self care begins with this idea of belonging. And when we think about belonging, you belong. So if we've healed that hurt, we're not trying to fix ourselves. We recognize I don't need to fix myself because I belong. As I am right now in this moment, I belong. And so we really want to start looking and seeing, when does that not feel accurate? When does that not feel true? So I want you to pause right now. And if you have pen and paper, which I always recommend that we have, let's just take a minute and think about all the ways you might should on yourself. And when we say I should, that's another indication that as I am right now, I don't belong. I need to do something different to belong. If should doesn't land with you, can't or not allowed. So think for yourself all the ways that I should limit my carbohydrates, or I can't eat that food, or I'm not allowed to do that activity. You know, think about how that shows up in diet culture because it shows up a lot. And this idea of we're trying to change ourselves in some capacity to fit in. Now, lots of people say to me, "But Megrette, I need to change." And I go, "Amen." But change is a choice. And I was at, a writing workshop, and the author turned around and said, "I haven't given consent." She goes, "I'm listening, and I hear you, but even though I'm here and I'm present, doesn't mean that I've given consent." And for me, that landed really hard because I think consent is assumed, and it shouldn't be. You can agree with someone and still not wanna do something. Uh-huh, yep, yep, that makes sense, yep, yep, nope, I still don't wanna do it. It seems like you're already consenting, and this is kind of one of those things where I feel like this idea about belonging is, well, if I pull back now, they won't like me. If I stop going along with this plan, they're gonna kick me out of the club, they're gonna vote me off the island, and this is really at the heart of belonging. You belong, and you are allowed to make choices that affirm that sense of belonging. And you don't have to twist yourself up into a pretzel to belong. Right now, as you are, you belong. And I find, like, so much in diet culture is we're with other people and they're like, "I don't eat sugar." So all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I shouldn't eat sugar," or, "I don't like that food," or "I feel like that food is bad." And all of a sudden you're like, I need to not like that food either." And there's lots of reasons why we go along with other people in the group. Being with other people does influence our food and eating choices, and there's lots of reasons why we go along. Sometimes it's just I don't wanna hear that person explain to me why my decisions are not in alignment with hers or theirs. Sometimes it's just like, I'll give it a whirl, like, I don't know, I might try that. So again, we're starting to recognize that why we belong and why we feel like we don't belong, it's a little bit more nuanced, it's a little bit more complex. But if somebody's turning around saying, like, "I don't believe in sugar," that doesn't mean that you don't believe in sugar. If somebody says, "I don't believe in artificial sweeteners," doesn't mean that you don't believe in artificial sweeteners. And so what happens is we're like, "Well, I don't wanna do that because I don't want to feel like I don't belong." And that sense of belonging is just it's really essential. So when you feel like you don't belong, when you feel othered, the suggestion is reach for how you belong. Other people in the, group may be choosing something that you don't wanna eat, and you can turn around and say, like, "How do I belong in this group?" It may not be with food. Our food and eating choices may diverge. That's fine. So what? But there's so much about this group or in this situation where I do belong. And so reaching for that sense of belonging is what creates sustainable self-care. And if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. So I really appreciate that. So once we get that sense of belonging, we're moving away from feeling othered and we're reaching into the sense of belonging. Um, we want to start thinking about ease. Hi, Linda. Thanks for joining us. And ease is often one of the things that diet culture uh, messes us up with. I've had a lot of people tell me that they can't do that because they don't want to be lazy. Yeah. Ow. So, first and foremost, when you reach for ease, you're not being lazy. And that's a really, really important thing to understand is that ease is actually the foundation of sustainable self-care. If you were at work or you were, listening to, I don't know, somebody talk and they said, "I want to create a system and I want to start with like the thing that doesn't work. And then after we do that thing that doesn't work, I want to go to another thing that doesn't work. And I wanna make it harder, and, like, once we figure it out, then I think we should make it harder." And right away, you should be turning around saying, "That doesn't make any sense." And I'm like, "It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense." But diet culture does that. It starts with, "Okay, you can do this thing, but then we need to make it harder." Yeah, you can start with, this activity to get your body moving, but then we have to make it harder. And I'm like, that is not how you create sustainable self-care. So, for instance, if you're turning around saying like, you know, cooking at night is working for me, the question you want to ask is, how can I make cooking at night easier, not harder? So if you're like, "Oh, it would be easier if, I could have the vegetables already chopped." Great. What are ways to get chopped vegetables? You could ingredient prep on a weekend, and you gotta ask yourself, "Does that make my life easier?" If it does, amen. If you're like, "I don't really have time on the weekend to ingredient prep, I don't wanna do that," then you gotta start saying to yourself, "How can I find vegetables that are chopped?" You might turn around and say, "They sell chopped vegetables at the store. I could ask someone else in the house to chop vegetables," which, by the way, does actually work. Or you could buy frozen vegetables and just say, "Oh, they already come chopped," which is so nice about frozen vegetables. You're not being lazy if you reach for ways to make making dinner easier. That's not laziness, that's a smart system design. So when we start reaching for ease, we're challenging this idea that being fat or living in a larger body is from the result of laziness. It's not. We come in all shapes and sizes. And this idea that you're not allowed to reach for ease, I think a lot of times kinds of plays into this belief that nutrition is a singular focus in our life, and that's not true. Have you guys ever seen those acrobats? They balance all the different plates, they spin these plates. When I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, that's my life." I have so many different plates that I'm trying to keep spinning. And so when we start thinking about changing our diet, recognize it isn't that you're spinning one plate, you're spinning many plates. And so by really turning around and saying, "How can I make it easier for me to spin these plates?" You're actually creating ease. And when we create ease, and you can see that I'm trying to align myself, ease is a basic human need. Ease is a basic human need, and I think so many of us didn't get that memo. I know when I was a younger woman, I didn't get that memo, and so I was like, "No, I don't deserve ease." And I'm like, "Ooh, that belonging thing is back again. I don't deserve ease. Why wouldn't I deserve ease? I belong. We all deserve ease." And so ease is that I'm okay, I'm safe, my needs are being met. That ease is really what we want. And ease is actually what when we create alignment, when our values align with our action, it creates that sense of flow. And that's actually what generates a lot of ease. So if we build systems on things that are working, if we build systems and we say, how can I make the system stronger by making it easier to do? You're actually saying the behavior that I want to do is easier to do than the behavior I don't want to do. And that's actually great system design. So once we understand this idea of belonging and ease, we really want to reach for seen and heard. And being seen and heard really does intersect, kind of like a Venn diagram, it overlaps with that belonging. I feel like I belong when I'm seen and heard. I have a greater sense of ease when I feel seen and heard. When I say to people, "I can't walk that distance, those foods don't fit, well in my body. Um, that isn't a choice that's easy for me to make." When I talk about my needs and other people go, "Okay, sure, let's make a change or let's adjust," or "I hear you and, this is how we can accommodate you." Um, I feel seen and heard, and I feel that sense of belonging, and I also have an increasing sense of ease. Now, that idea of being seen and heard, we have to see and hear ourselves. We are the person that have to see and hear ourselves. And we have to see and hear all the times we exclude ourselves. We have to see and hear all the times that our life is difficult and we're denying that. We have to see and hear all the times that we're successful, which I know for a lot of people is like, I only track the bad things. I don't track all the things I'm doing well. And I'm like, that's part of being seen and heard. We're so conditioned to see our struggles, and we haven't really practiced seeing our strengths. And that to me is part of this journey when we talk about sustainable self-care. If you can identify what's working and you make it easier to do, you're back into that alignment. And that alignment is what creates ease, it creates flow. And so you have to see, you have to have that sense like, I know what's working. This works for me. And when other people are like, it doesn't work for me, you're like, well, happy for you, Bob. I'm glad it doesn't work for you. That's great wisdom to know, Bob. And Bob is my fictitious person that I pick on. But so many times we think, well, it doesn't work for Bob. I shouldn't do it. And I'm like, no, let Bob figure out his own path. You are figuring out your path. And so because it doesn't work for Bob, it has nothing really to do with you. And we have to see that. Bob is his own person. And we can rejoice that Bob is trying to figure out what works for Bob. But that shouldn't derail our efforts to acknowledge what's working for you, to acknowledge and hear, this is just not going to work for me. Me doing that ingredient prep, that's not going to be sustainable for me. And it may be super sustainable on, the first week of the month, but not sustainable on the third. So you might turn around and say, like, I can chop vegetables this week, but next week I got to buy frozen. That's fine. Your weeks are not the same all the time. And this belief that there's only one way to do things, it's a false belief. There's lots of ways. The reason why you can see it as a false belief is you're taking time to see and hear yourself. Now, the last step is, and this is really the tricky part, is the non-judgment. And I think a lot of times when we feel hurt, when we experience, so feeling seen and heard, when we hear ourselves, and we're going to have some sensations, and they may be a little ouchy. I think diet culture has conditioned us to believe that if I feel hurt or sad or frustrated or angry, I did something wrong. You didn't. Feeling hurt or angry or sad or upset or happy or glee or gratitude, those are normal human emotions. They're normal human emotions. Life is not one feeling. It's very complex. It's a nice big pie chart. And so when we start really looking at these normal human emotions and we just say they're just here, they're feelings, they exist, then we don't have to label them as that's a good feeling or that's a bad feeling. I'm good, I'm bad. I'm right, I'm wrong. You are. And again, you can hear how this non-judgment really affirms that sense of belonging. That non-judgment really does make your life a lot easier. That non-judgment allows you to see the beautiful, bright, sparkly parts of your life, but also the tender, sticky, ouchy parts. Because you're not judging either. You're not good if your life is sparkly, and you're not bad if it's a little dull. Your life is. And so those are the 4 things that we're really trying to work on in this, second quarter. So for the next 3 months, we're really gonna be unpacking this idea of belonging, this idea of, um, ease, this idea of being seen and heard, and this idea of non-judgment. And of course, when we feel like we belong, we're not experiencing that sense of being othered. When we feel that sense of ease, we're not experiencing this fatigue or uncertainty that we can continue. When we feel this sense of seen and heard, we're not feeling ignored or invisible. And when we feel this sense of non-judgment, that I can move through my life and I'm not navigating somebody else's opinion, then we turn around and that whole part about feeling judged. So many of my clients come into a situation and diet culture has always said, well, being you has been wrong. You're not supposed to be this size or this weight. You're not supposed to have this health condition. You're not supposed to, need to rest or to stop or to stretch or to sit down or to do this activity versus that activity. And you're letting that all go. We're letting all of those shoulds and not allows and have tos and can'ts, we're just letting those all go. And because we're turning around saying, I don't need to judge myself. There's a beautiful poem, and I'll put it in the show notes as well. And it's by a poet, Mary Oliver. And I read it, I'm over 60, and I read it at my 60th birthday about how worry has never helped her. And it really landed for me. And I was just like, I spent a lot of time worrying, and it's never helped me. It didn't really change anything. It just took my sparkle. It took my vitality because I was spending all this energy worrying. I'll definitely open it up for you guys. I hope that that's a really good bridge. So what are your thoughts? Use the chat if you're in a place to do that. Like I said, in the next quarter, so for the next 3 months, we're going to be talking about sustainable self-care and what allows us to have sustainable self-care. And again, it's that belonging, that sense that we belong, reaching for ease whenever we can, um, really seeing and hearing ourselves without judgment. And if you guys haven't seen the Inclusive Diabetes Care Pyramid, I'll also put a link into that as well. Beautiful. If there's no questions, I hope you guys have a great week. It was wonderful seeing you. Thank you so much for joining me. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.